friends, and welcome to the May 10th edition of Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly opportunity for mainstream Texans of faith to learn about public policy issues here in the great state of Texas and have a conversation about how you can engage in the process. My name is Scott Adnip, your host and Texas Impact's Engagement Director, and today's episode is brought to you by Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas and Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas. And friends, there are only 3 weeks left in the Texas legislative session. So today and the next 2 Mondays will look different than the 17 or 18 that have come before. Rather than having a guest and spending time talking about an issue of the week, we're going to focus on our legislative update and action alert and send you off on your way to make your telephone calls and do your engaging with legislators. And we were going to have Josh do that today, as he has for so many other weeks, but he just got whisked away to the Capitol on kind of some emergency work that he has to do. So we're going to have a last minute substitute. And what better substitute could we have than our Executive Director Bee Moorhead, who will be providing that legislative update and action alert today. So we're going to go through this episode. We hope that you'll make your calls, but spoiler alert, the next 3 weeks are going to be very busy. And so you're going to be hearing from us several times throughout the course of the week. So make sure that you're signed up to receive our rapid response notifications, and make sure that you're a member of a legislative engagement group so you can be connected with other advocates in your district. You can do those by going to texasimpact.org, clicking on the Action Center. If you can't find it, you can always email me at scott@texasimpact.org for more information. And I just want to take a second to affirm the incredible work that you all have been doing. It might feel frustrating sometimes. It might feel like the outcomes aren't what you had hoped, but Josh and the Texas Impact team have been hearing from legislative staffers talking about the work that you're doing. And we might talk about some of that either on this episode or in our legislative engagement group conversation later today. But know that the work you're doing matters. And so there are 3 more weeks to do that work. We hope that you'll put all of your energy, all of your spare time you can into engaging with your legislators, finding some friends to join the process with you. And I promise, don't tell the boss. I don't know that she would affirm this language. But as soon as a session is over, we'll give you a week or 2 to catch your breath and take a break and not hear from us for a few days. But then we'll start back up and start engaging the next piece of the legislative cycle to affirm the work the legislature did and to hold them accountable maybe when they didn't do so well. And we'll start that this summer. But before we jump in, we will continue today we'll take a moment to center ourselves on what many of you have been saying is one of your favorite new segments of Weekly Witness, which is the Weekly Word. And I have to say I've loved starting my Mondays with the Weekly Word. And today we are going to be joined by one of our own. We're going to be joined by Texas Impact's Pastoral Fellow, Sid Earnheart, who's a recent Perkins School of Theology graduate, an attorney who's working through the ordination process in the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church, somebody who I have really appreciated getting to know over the course of the last few years, even if his college football choices are subpar. So with that, Sid, thanks for joining us today. The floor is now yours for this week's Weekly Word.
Thank you, Scott. Apologies in advance to your Longhorns during this upcoming college football season. In preparation of the Weekly Word for this week, I re-listened to those that had recently gone before me, following in the footsteps of Rabbi Josh Fixler, who talked about free will and the freedom to choose between good and evil, and that all people are of one human family. And then Reverend Crystal Leedy, a Presbyterian minister, she reminded us that individuals, not numbers, are the people affected by the policies and the laws that we put in place to govern ourselves. And then Reverend George Wilson, a Baptist pastor, who talked to us about the importance of advocacy and a little bit about the history of advocacy. In conjunction with their messages, I'm going to challenge all of us, including myself, regarding advocacy work that God calls us to over the next couple of days, weeks, months, and years. Recently, I was asked how I understood the purpose and the call to action of the church and how has it changed given these historic times with all of the issues that have seemed to culminate in 2020 and bled into 2021, including a rise in fascism, an attempted overthrow of the United States government, and a global pandemic, among others. Rather than just talk about the purpose and the call of the church, I'm going to broaden that a little bit. I'm going to broaden the context here, and I'd like to talk about how I understand the purpose and call to action of all people of faith. Certainly, I would tell you the moment is historic, and there are unique challenges for this generation at the present, but I submit the purpose and call to action of people of faith remains the same. Perhaps what is changing is the realization or revelation that faith communities need to evolve in the way they have understood their purpose and have been living out their respective calls to action. And I would submit to you that a larger part of that call to action is advocacy work. I'm going to offer this quote from Christian theologian Catherine Tanner. Catherine Tanner said this: "Action is the proper response to take with respect to a world that is not the way it should be, because human action does not bring about life in God. Life is God's unconditional gift to us. But rather, human action of a sort is what God is requiring of us." I'm going to read that last part again to let it sink in. Human action of a certain sort is what God requires of us. That may seem unfair. If nothing else, right, 2020 and 2021 have spotlighted just how challenging life can be at times. Given all the burdens of this life, how is it fair that God can require something else of us? Though it may be a tool in our belt that we haven't sharpened in a while or that we've never used before, our ability to advocate is a gift from God. It's a powerful tool that God has given us to help undo some of the burdens that this life brings. When we find the world broken, lost, and hurting, God gave us the ability to advocate for and act on behalf of those marginalized and oppressed, and even ourselves. So as we become disheartened, as the Texas state legislature in this session continues to empower injustice throughout its legislative choices, I think we feel powerless. And I know when I feel powerless, I have a tendency to effectively ask God what God intends to do about it. And I'll say this, as a wise man once taught me, God turns that right back around on us. Says, "Sid, the question is not what am I going to do about it? The question is, what are you going to do about it?" To say better yet, what are we going to do about it as people of faith? Will we continue to sit idly by as our elected officials continue to make policies that oppress and marginalize those that need our help? Or when we listen to the words of Rabbi Fixler, Reverend Leedy, and Reverend Wilson, who remind us that we are all connected, that we were given the power to choose between good and evil, that individuals, not numbers, are those affected by our policies, and that God gave us this ability to advocate. On a personal note, when I first became connected with Texas Impact through my pastoral internship at Perkins, I had discerned as much that my call, my work, my life would be to advocacy on and behalf of people of faith. But it wasn't until my pastoral internship, that's now turned into this pastoral fellowship, that I've come to understand the importance of advocacy on behalf of faith-based people and congregations in the public square or in public policy. And so, as you're listening to this, and as you move forward, I would invite you to reflect on what advocacy might look like in your community and within our great state. And I also invite you to engage with Texas Impact on any type of advocacy ideas that you might have moving forward. And I guess with that, I'd like to leave you with a quick blessing. If you'd please join me. Loving God, we just thank you for all the blessings you pour out upon us. We ask your forgiveness when we are not the stewards of your creation that you have called us to be. We ask your forgiveness, and we ask the forgiveness of others that we've hurt when we treat one another as numbers on a page or as data, as opposed to making decisions that value human life. God, we thank you that you have given us tools that allow us to recognize when we have hurt others, when we've done damage, and you've given us the ability to be able to discern how we might be able to turn that around, how we might be able to help one another, and how we might be better stewards of your creation, and also just reflect you in and throughout our lives. And God, we just thank you for this.
Thanks, Sid. Before I let you go, first of all, thank you for that reflection. I know people will also be wondering about our Courts and Ports program, and you've played a leadership role in getting that relaunched. I know you and Sarah Cruz had a chance to go down with three of our favorite clergy people last week to explore what it will take to relaunch that program that allows Texans of Faith to go down and experience what's happening at the border. Just quickly, well, we're going to have that group back on in a couple of weeks for a longer conversation. But quickly, how was that, and what's next for the program?
Sure. So, yes, like you said, we were able to go down, and I can't think enough all of I guess the list is too long for me to think. Not only the three gentlemen that came down, the three pastors that came down to help us kind of navigate some more details and to allow us to kind of test out some of that experience on them, but all of the partners, both United States and Mexico, and all of the organizations that allow us to partner with them to help bring people of faith inside the state of Texas down there. I just can't say, I guess I just don't have enough grace or enough thanks or enough praise that I can pour out upon them. I will say that it is looking very much like Courts and Ports will be reopened, I will say, either in late May or early June to groups beyond just these kind of initial test groups that we are doing. And we are very much looking forward to bringing, small groups from congregations back down to the South Texas border to learn about and experience the wonderful work that's going on down there, but very much be a voice and an advocate for the seekers and the migrants that are still very much being marginalized and oppressed by the policy of our, well, quite frankly, our federal government.
All right, well, appreciate that. And keep an eye on texasimpact.org, watch the e-news for updates on that, and we'll certainly be talking about it more on Weekly Witness post-legislative session. Sid, thanks for the time. I mentioned in the open, we are being joined today by our Executive Director, Bee Moorhead, who had about 15 minutes of heads up notice that she'd be doing this today. So we're going to make it through together, right, Bee?
It's going to be great.
All right. So again, 3 weeks left in the legislative session. Josh hates this question. For those who watch regularly, you'll remember him pushing back on me even asking him this question. But how are you feeling with 3 weeks to go?
Well, Scott, I love to be asked how I'm feeling. But as you were giving me my minute and a half of heads up about what questions I was going to get asked, and you asked if I wanted to be asked how I'm feeling, I thought to myself, there's a question that we could be asking each other right now that might be a little more on point to how we're feeling. And that question is, how is it with your soul? How is it with your soul? And if I were to answer the question, how is it with my soul? I would say today, my soul is in good shape. I'm feeling confident in my faith and my faith community, and I include the entire community of faith in Texas in that. I'm confident that the ways that we have taught ourselves and each other to be in relationship and interact with each other, even when times are stressful and there's a lot of strife, I am confident that those relationships and ways of being together are going to carry the day eventually. And it may not be in the next 21 days that we see that completely borne out, but I think we will. So how's it with your soul, Scott?
Well, I was going to say, Sid Perkins grad's probably going to give you some bonus points for like quoting John Wesley or something. But similarly, and I kind of referenced this at the beginning, the work that the Texas Impact community, the legislative engagement group members, the rapid response team members are doing has been incredible. And we talked about in our staff meeting this morning that the officers are recognizing the work that you're doing. Now, we might not see outcomes from that work in the next 21 days. But as I said to the legislative engagement group members a couple of times, like, this isn't a sprint. The work doesn't end at the end of the legislative session. We just start the next portion of the work, and we have some work to do, right? This is a long game. We have to keep our folks engaged and bring more people to the party. And so I'm proud of the work folks are doing. We still have work to do, both over the next 21 days, but also over the next probably 21 years, right?
You know, that's right. And really quickly, before, I know you want to ask me about specific legislation, and it is likely to be kind of a buzzkill. It's kind of a bring down to hear about some of the things that happened in the legislature last week and even on Saturday. And I will say that when I went into worship in my church's Zoom worship yesterday, I was feeling not great. And my pastor, Matt Gaventa, who's a known quantity to our Texas Impact family, preached a sermon that made me rethink how I thought I was feeling, and made me reframe that question about my soul. He talked about joy, and what he pointed out was that there was a photographer who took a lot of pictures in Chicago last summer of the ongoing protests of George Floyd's murder, long after all of that was going on all over the country. This photographer was specifically documenting what was going on in Chicago. And what they saw over and over was that as part of the ongoing protest movement, people were dancing. And he reminded us that, you know, our faith tells us, all of our faith traditions tell us that we have to celebrate even when, and maybe especially when, things are really rough. And that's because joy is not the same thing as being happy. My son and daughter-in-law have taught their 18-month-old, my grandson, to say the word happy. He says it a lot. He says happy a lot. But joy and happiness are not the same thing. And you know, Matt reminded us that the point of our faith is not a moment of happiness. It's the joy of being in relationship together. I thought that was especially poignant because that's what Representative Donna Howard said in a really bad moment on the floor of the legislature, when the House was discussing, it was actually discussing abortion legislation. That's not something Texas Impact takes a position on, but we watched to see how legislators interact with each other. And she said, you know, this is a really hard time, and the way we work together in the legislature is based on relationship. And she was kind of naming some times when those relationships get damaged. But it's important for all of us to remember the way our democratic process works and the way we're supposed to find joy in our relationships is the way we're supposed to find joy in the process is in those relationships, not in whether we win or lose on a specific thing. I will say now is the time that everyone who are listening to Weekly Witness, who are participating in rapid response, those folks, Scott, have been doing an amazing job. The legs that are meeting weekly, what everyone needs to remember is those relationships are more important than how happy or mad you are about any one legislative issue. Now's a good time to be reminding legislators and legislative staff and your friends and neighbors that you agree or disagree with that the joy in this process is that we can love each other and not that one of us can beat the other one. So as we get ready to talk about some things that are making people feel pretty beat up and mad, just remember there's more to it than that.
Yeah, so it's also important to remember. So we've talked about our mood, and we talked about Representative Howard's speech, which was towards the beginning of last week. It kind of went downhill from there, right? There seems to be a bit of a mood in the Capitol right now. Is that fair to say?
The people in the Capitol are feeling some feelings, as we say. There are a lot of people in the Capitol, including on, I won't even just say on both sides politically, on all sides politically, from all kinds of communities. There are people who are feeling like this is not what they signed up for, that they didn't sign up just to be participating in ad hominem and fighting over ideology. A lot of people went to the Capitol to make smart policy decisions that would improve conditions in their communities, who feel like they're not getting the opportunity to do that. We can talk about what makes the opportunity for someone to do that. When is it that you're not getting the opportunity, and when is it that you're not making the opportunity? But the fact is, with 3 weeks left to go in the session, a lot of dynamics are set for this session, and members are not happy, and their staffs are not happy. It's emotionally, it's very exhausting. And Scott Braddock, who's the editor of the Quorum Report, which many of your listeners I know is a kind of insider. It's like the Hill for Austin. Scott said, part of the problem here is this is the part of the session when people's claws always come out because they have a thing they really care about and somebody else has a thing they really care about, and we got to make deals and all. It's never the very most collegial part of the session. Unfortunately, legislators didn't get the opportunity to have the most collegial part of the session. The part at the beginning when they are meeting each other and learning about each other's backgrounds and seeing pictures of each other's grandchildren and things like that. They didn't get to have that because we had COVID and we had the winter storm. So in some ways, the whole public of Texas kind of got ripped off, but nobody more so than those 181 members.
So let's talk about some of the high points from last week. So at this point of session, there was obviously many things that happen each week. But last week, I think there were two high-profile bills or updates on two high-profile bills or issues that Texas Impact has been following that at least really stuck out to me. And first was the debate around Senate Bill 7, which is one of the voter suppression bills, which, if you'll remember from last week, had been replaced with the language of House Bill 6, right? So Senate Bill 7 now equals House Bill 6 language. And that came up on Thursday, and I think it'd be fair to say that there were a lot of twists and turns to that conversation that went until 3:30 in the morning or something like that, that ended with a bunch of amendments being added on early Friday morning. So what do we need to know about that omnibus voting bill? What happened and where are we now?
So what happened? In part one, the House committee that was responsible for that legislation made some moves to get the legislation to the floor and made some parliamentary errors. And so there was some tension around that legislation parliamentarily, setting aside the substantive tension of policies. There was tension over that legislation before it ever got ready to come to the floor. When it came to the floor, there was this question over was it House Bill 6 or Senate Bill 7. And those two bills did not have exactly the same provisions to start with. There was long debate over the House Bill 6, which that committee substituted in for Senate Bill 7, so not all the same provisions. There was confusion among the members over provisions that were or were not in this version of the bill, in the House Bill 6 version of the bill. There were 129. There were way more than 100 amendments filed to the legislation. At some point, I remember tweeting that it was important for people to remember that we were on Amendment 1. It was already past your kid's bedtime, Scott.
Probably past my bedtime, but yeah.
Well,
normal times.
Your audience deserves to know that you are chronically sleep deprived lately, but still doing an amazing job. So during that first part of the debate, the Representative Rafael Anchia from Dallas asked some questions of the chair about, and I say this because this is the part that your audience most likely have heard about language in the bill referring to the purity of the ballot, which is language that was from the secessionist South. And the author of the bill, Chairman Kane, said that he hadn't been aware that language was in the bill, and it has subsequently been removed, at least from that version of the bill. And I would predict it's gone for good. But after all that had gone on, we were up at 10 o'clock at night or so, then that is when there was point of order called on the bill. You remember I said there were a lot of parliamentary procedural complexities because of the way that it had happened, and the point of order was solid. It was a good solid point of order. It had to do something that was really going to be legislatively a problem if the bill were to pass. But so what we know is that a point of order is often used to kill a bill. It's used to make the bill so that it's, because of where it is in the process, it just can't be revived. Like we don't have that bill now. But when a bill is a big piece of, honestly, political theater that this one is, and there's a lot of high level interest in the outcome, sometimes the way that the House handles that is, instead to say, if you'll withdraw your point of order, we would like to make a deal about what goes on instead. And so in return for withdrawing that point of order, the House leadership allowed a lot of amendments. And I will tell you, as I was reading through the amendments, with what I will just honestly, it was a pretty jaundiced eye about what might be in the amendments. They're great. There's a lot of stuff in that bill that we really like now. There are things that make it better, and there are also things that are better than current law. So you'd think, well, we should be doing a happy dance and saying everybody can go home and eat waffles for the rest of Weekly Witness this week. But what everybody needs to know is now, because those bills don't match, because the House version will be so different from the Senate version, there will be a conference process. And I think it's unlikely that all of those amendments will stay, but I think it is not only possible, but probable that some of them will. And so what it would be important right now for Weekly Witness listeners to do is to tell your Senate member you support the version of the House version of the bill rather than the initial Senate version. The House made a number of changes that make that bill a lot better. And you want the Senate conferees to adopt the House provisions, and then to tell the House members that you appreciate their being willing to work together and make those important changes. Does Texas Impact support this bill? We don't think it's necessary. Do we think that the version that passed the House is the dangerous voter suppression that it was hours before it passed the House? No, I am just worried that it won't stay the way it passed the House. So stay tuned. But for right now, we're thanking House members for taking some of those provisions and fixing them.
All right, so while that was going on, I didn't go back and look. My recollection is about 1 o'clock in the morning, you or Josh texted and said, hey, there's a public education hearing in the morning to reconsider Senate Bill 29, which is the anti-trans biological sex and sports bill that a couple of weeks ago, I think we reported was on life support, that the Public Education Committee had failed to move it forward. And they considered it again Friday morning. What happened there?
So, I said the point of order was really substantive on Senate Bill 7, and there was actually a big deal that was made. Well, that all takes a little time. And in fact, it took so much time that at some point the speaker said, we're going to go ahead and keep hearing other bills while we're making some perfecting amendments, drafting some perfecting amendments to Senate Bill 7, House Bill 6. While those bills were being heard, one of them was a bill related to charter schools. And Representative Dutton was the sponsor of the bill, and Representative Alma Allen called a point of order on that bill. And unlike the Senate Bill 7, Representative Dutton's bill was, and I'm trying to see if I have it written down in a place where 3731, House Bill 3731, I think is the one that was. Although someone can correct me if they're on Weekly Witness and they know it was a different number. But in fact, I'm sure it was not that number. I'm sorry, it was a different bill. But Alma Allen, representative from Houston, former school administrator, very opposed to empowering charter schools. Representative Dutton bringing a bill to empower charter schools, and she killed his bill on a point of order. And he was put out by that. And so at 1 o'clock in the morning, he announced that the Public Education Committee was going to meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. And at that time, it was going to be, no one would have known exactly what time they would be done, but the legislature got done like at 2, and the meeting was at 9.
3:30. I just want to.
3:30.
Yeah.
The meeting was at 9, and it was what's called a public meeting, not a public hearing, because it was to consider legislation that had already had public testimony. So what that means is they weren't going to broadcast the hearing. They weren't going to broadcast the meeting. So if you weren't there in the room, you wouldn't see what happened. But what they were going to consider was Senate Bill 29, this bill that a couple of weeks ago, the chair had said he wasn't going to vote on. Everyone considered that it was likely doomed. The people who supported that bill were already spanking legislators they thought should have worked harder. When the committee met on Friday morning, Texas Impact, having heard that this meeting was going to happen, thought it prudent to send someone to record the meeting, since it was going to be a meeting where there wasn't going to be an official recording. So we did, and I'm glad we did, because it is not very often that you get to hear a legislators say the things Representative Dutton said. What he said was that he was angry that his bill had been brought down on a point of order the night before, and that because that had happened, he was going to call back up and pass Senate Bill 29, a bill that he knew people believed was going to hurt children. And what he said was, well, my bill would have affected a lot more children than this bill will. So we're going to go ahead and pass my bill now. Pass this bill now, Senate Bill 29. And the committee did. They passed it. And I mean, does that mean it's going to pass the legislature? I mean, I'm not a crystal ball person. If I were, I'd make a lot more money if I had a crystal ball. But the chances that it will pass went up by orders of magnitude. I mean, it is now much, much more likely that that bill is going to pass. And the people who support it, Texas Impact opposes it. People who support it know that they were given, kind of a second lease on life on this bill, and I'm certain that they're not wasting any time. So, it's not very often that voters get a chance to hear a legislator speak so plainly about their actual motivation on moving legislation. I've never heard a legislator admit, particularly in that official context, that they were moving legislation they understood that their own constituents opposed out of spite for another member, even when they knew that it was going to harm innocent people. It is absolutely shocking, but very instructive for the public. And I really would encourage people to watch the video. It popped up for me on my alerts. If you are following Ledge TV, you'll find it. Representative Harold Dutton passes Senate Bill 9 out of committee. People owe it to themselves to hear it from the horse's mouth. That's what I think.
Yeah, so many of the things we've talked about today, we do have video clips of and much more. If you follow Ledge TV, certainly on Twitter, you can subscribe to the Texas Impact YouTube channel and find the videos in there. But that's certainly been a tool for people to stay informed and to see what's actually happening.
That's right. I guess because we bring that up, and I said specifically, it's not very often that you get to hear legislators say stuff like that. It's a good reminder that legislators don't usually do stuff for no reason. Usually, just like anybody else, a legislator, would probably follow the path of least resistance, right? So unless there is a reason to do something, they wouldn't choose to do it if it seems like it's going to cause conflict. Therefore, I think it's really important right now for Texans to call some legislative offices, specifically some Senate offices, and ask why they are not moving some particular pieces of legislation. I'm referring to the two House bills that we would describe as the sort of fallback Medicaid expansion bills. They are not really Medicaid expansion, certainly not in that broad sense, but they would sure make Medicaid a better, more functional program for two specific constituencies, women who've just had babies and children. In our action alert, we've got some specific instruction about calling senators, particularly senators who are on the public health, the Senate Health Committee, Senate Health and Human Services, to inquire why those bills aren't moving through the Senate, because they didn't really have trouble moving through the House. And as I say, when something is moving or not moving, generally, if it's a problem, there's a reason. Legislators don't just decide, although it's gonna cause me all kinds of personal conflict. I'm just gonna do this thing even though I don't really care. There's a reason, and it would be helpful to know what the reason is. So I'd encourage people to look at the action alert and check that out.
Yeah, so nice transition. We will move to the action alert. And for those who are listening, you can find that at texasimpact.org. Click on the Action Center. For those who are with us in the webinar live, that will be online very soon. But we're going to walk through it quickly. So those who listen every week will know that we usually highlight a couple of special issues at the top of each. And today there are 3 bills that we're highlighting off the top. First are 2 bills that require almost immediate calls to your representative. First is to oppose House Bill 3920 by Representative Dean, which is a voting bill. Bee, do you want to add anything on that one?
No, just that it's a bill that has to do with disability, and of all the constituencies that people should really be paying attention to, making voting more difficult for the disability community is counter to at least the past 20 years of legislative progress in Texas.
The next one is one that we hope that the representatives will support. That's House Bill 140 by Representative Rose, relating to the death penalty for defendants with serious mental illness.
A long time Texas Impact priority that we're glad to see moving. Yeah.
All right, and the next 2 bills that are in calendars that we would describe as bullying LGBT kids. So you've hopefully gotten to know the calendars committee staffers very well over the course of the last few weeks. We have a couple more calls going into them this week. 2 bills related to bullying children that identify as transgender. First is House Bill 1399 by Representative Krause, and Josh has spoken pretty passionately about this one over the course of the last few weeks. This is the one that would prohibit doctors from performing gender transition or gender reassignment medical procedures and treatments, and those taking medications would immediately lose access. And then the second would be Senate Bill 29, which Bee just referenced. So calling calendars on those 2 bills to oppose.
Yeah, I just say one thing about calling calendars. If you have called calendars relentlessly during the past couple of weeks and you've talked to them about these bills before, and you're looking for something, a creative alternative to just calling, I would suggest that right about now is when your Twitter account can really be your friend. Do not hesitate to be tweeting publicly at members of the House Calendars Committee, urging them to do the right thing on these bills.
Yes, and I'd also say on those calendars calls, they're getting a ton of telephone calls, and so I don't think this is your chance to try to convince them, making an argument for the bills. It's really giving them a list, and they'll be very happy if you take the shortest amount of time possible.
Yeah.
Correct.
Indeed.
Also, we're calling our House member to oppose anti-renewable amendments to House Bill 1556. You want to say a word about that one?
I don't have anything specific to say about this particular bill. The reason that it's on the list is because we're seeing that it is the most concerning in terms of the progress that it's making. But I think it is important to tell your House members at this point, you oppose anti-renewable amendments on this, and you oppose anti-renewable provisions in all legislation, because there's a full-blown effort on the part of some parties to use the opportunity of the winter storm to put a target on renewable energy that I think most Texans are just baffled by why anybody would want to take an industry that has risen quickly to being a point of pride for our state and trying to kneecap it right now just when we need it the most.
All right, moving forward, we have a couple of healthcare bills, which you've already mentioned. First is we really support House Bill 133 by Representative Rose. This is the one that would provide 12 months of health coverage after pregnancy. And the ask here, as you mentioned earlier, is to call the senators on the Senate Health and Human Services Committee and ask them to set a hearing for House Bill 133. Is that right?
Yes.
Right.
And inquire why they're not setting a hearing when we know we are so close.
And similarly, and this was on there last week, and we got a couple of responses from folks on this, suggesting that maybe it was an accident that it hadn't been referred. But House Bill 290 by Representative Cortez would provide 12 months of continuous health coverage for children, as opposed to making parents reapply every 6 months. This one was passed by the House, but it has yet to be referred to a committee. So the call on this one's to the Lieutenant Governor, right?
Yeah, and this is a red tape bill. I mean, whatever people think about expanding coverage to populations that don't have it or things like this doesn't have anything to do with that. This is a red tape bill. And even maybe particularly conservative members of the legislature, we would think would prefer to diminish red tape at state agencies.
And then finally, same telephone call. While you're calling Lieutenant Governor, there are 3 George Floyd related bills that are good bills that have passed the House but have yet to be referred to committee. Those are House Bill 829, House Bill 830, and House Bill 834, all by Representative Sinfronia Thompson. Calling Lieutenant Governor to ask those to be referred.
Yep.
Anything to add on that one?
Again, your social media is your friend. Do not hesitate to tweet at the Lieutenant Governor and say, don't make Texas get to the end of this session without taking some action on George Floyd legislation.
Right. We have a couple questions. I see a hand raised in our participant list, so probably not going to bring you on, but if you could maybe post your question in the Q&A, we'll see if we can have time to get to it. But first question for you, B, is related to when you think the conference committee for Senate Bill 7 will be named to begin their work.
I can't guess. I would assume this week, but I think I would assume this week.
Hey, somebody asked me last week, and I want to make sure I got the answer right, so I'm not going to try to answer it online. I'm just going to ask it to you. So what's the process now? Does it go back to the Senate, and how do they handle whether or not to go to conference committee?
The Senate, actually, it's not. I'm not 100% sure. I would need to look at the legislative. I'd need to look at the daily report to see exactly what it says. Either they passed. I think it is going to be that the Senate needs to not concur on the House amendments, but it may be that the Senate is going to do something and then the House is going to not concur. So I reserve the right to not know the answer to that question.
All right. Cool.
You said this thing about the amendments flying through. Yeah, there's no record of House members voting on any of that batch of amendments. They were a package deal.
That's in relation to the Senate Bill 7 for those who are listening.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Sorry, I was just.
All right. I gotcha. All right. Anything you want to add before we close out today?
I really appreciate Anita pointing out that the Book of Joy, which I have as well, I really encourage people to take a minute to think about how lucky we are to live in a democracy and call your legislator's office and thank them for their work, even if you can't thank them for the results at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's important to remember when we make those telephone calls. I know a couple of people have responded and said the staffer seemed very short and irritated with me. I was like, yeah, they're probably getting 500 telephone calls today, and let's be honest, I might also be irritated if my phone. Yeah. So be nice, be kind, share joy, and keep making those telephone calls and inviting your friends to do the same. They need to hear from you, but we're going to do it in a respectful and nice and loving way. So Bee, thank you so much for the time today. Thanks for the work you're doing every day. We really appreciate Sid jumping in for the weekly word today, and want to thank all of you both for tuning in today, but for the incredible work that you've been doing this legislative session. As we said at the beginning, we have 3 weeks left. So let's finish strong. We'll take a break and then we'll get going again. For those of you who are not members of the Rapid Response Team, we'd encourage you to do that so you can receive updates later this week. As things change, make sure you sign up for a legislative engagement group so you can be paired up with other advocates in your legislative district. You can find information about both of those at texasimpact.org and the Action Center, which is where you can also find the Action Alert. And remember, if you appreciate Texas Impact and the Weekly Witness community, please make sure that you and your congregation are members of Texas Impact. Our work is supported by members like you, so make sure you do that online at texasimpact.org/join. Y'all, it has been such an honor to be a part of this process with you. I'm looking forward to finishing out the next 3 weeks with you. But I'd also love to finish out the next 3 weeks with you and some friends. So go ahead and share this content, invite your friends to be a part of this process with you, and let's all work together to make this closing push. So with that, let's get to work.